Hey everyone, Pugs here to start off my Season 4 reviews of SpongeBob SquarePants. I can't believe the time has already come to begin my 4th season of reviews, because it really feels like just yesterday I was starting off Season 3, or even making my first video. Time flies. It's really exciting that we're now at this point, because now I'm finally going to be able to cover episodes that people have real issues with, and I'm going to be swimming in some hot takes, just telling you now. I'm also excited because I finally get to put on my modern SpongeBob defense lawyer hat. Though, really, I guess I should put on my middle-aged SpongeBob defense lawyer hat. Don't worry, I wear both. Alright, but that's enough of that preamble. Today, I'm reviewing Fear of a Krabby Patty and Shell of a Man, officially beginning our foray into Season 4. And like I always do, I have to say thank you to everyone watching. I've really been loving y'all's support, and I especially feel it when I get to a milestone video like this one. Oh, and one more thing before I get started, but I'm excited to say that today's video is a collaboration between myself and another member of the SpongeBuddy Mania forum, Spongyreviews. They've got a channel of their own, which is linked in the description, so check them out. And so what this is going to look like is that they're going to review Fear of a Krabby Patty. Then I'm going to review it, responding to some of the things they said. So you can get two different perspectives in one. Shell of a Man will follow my review of Fear of a Krabby Patty like usual. Now, let's just get right into it, and let me give the floor to Spongyreviews.
Hey Pugs. It's nice to be on your channel. I am Spongyreviews. I do reviews and top 10s on my channel, but not right now since I am trying to find an episode to review first. My channel link will be in the description. Anyways, thank you for inviting me over. So Fear of a Krabby Patty is one of those episodes for me that you like the first time you watch them, but the second time you watch it, it's one of the best episodes in the series, and since Season 4 is my favorite season, this episode has high expectations for me. Also, if you say this is a rip-off of Graveyard Shift, it's not. It has similar ideas but completely different executions. And a hot take is that I like this one more than Graveyard Shift. So the episode starts off with Mr. Krabs making a new business hours sign, and here we start off with my favorite part about the episode, the jokes. I think this might be the funniest episode with so many good jokes that I will talk about, like couldn't we get to work earlier than 6 a.m. Chef's kiss to the writers who worked on this episode. Also, the animation looks off if you could say it. But it's because it was storyboarded by the same person who storyboarded Dying for Pie, and then the chum bucket opens for 23 hours, and then we get hit with another perfect joke. I just love SpongeBob in the first half of this episode, being so excited that the Krusty Krab is open for 24 hours, and then we see SpongeBob screaming, which is not a good sign for later in the show, but I guess him just taking stuff into plan too soon. And Karen appears barely in this episode, but she still manages to be my second favorite character. I like the even my bags are bags. And a close-up, which is classic and really funny, and did I mention how funny this episode is? I really like the expressions in this episode. Also, the lines in this episode are iconic to me, like the weird sound Plankton makes, which is really funny, and then we get the joke Peter Langton, which is so funny to me. And I like the speech Mr. Krabs gives to SpongeBob for a quick joke, which is also funny. Also, Team Krusty Krab is one of my favorite quotes. SpongeBob is really excited for some reason, and then we get ITS Day 15 ITS the meme OMG, and then that scene with Day 15 and wait what's going on, whoa, is the best scene in the episode, which is so funny that I cannot comprehend how funny this episode is. This is the most funny episode ever, and Mr. Krabs forgetting what day it is with the expressions is so funny. Also, SpongeBob is starting to get weird with this expression that I really like. The expressions on this episode are like season 11 or 12, which is a good thing, and SpongeBob going crazy does show how much overworking can get you pretty weird without sleep. And seeing people as Krabby Patties saying weird sounds is the funniest thing about this episode. And I cannot decide what the funniest thing about this is because it's just jam-filled with funny jokes that are really good. Next we got the Dr. Peter Langton segment, which is so good and funny. Too Tight is really funny, and the best joke is wait, where do you get that piano? It's my favorite joke in the show. We get another joke with I have arranged them into a piano, and it falls on plankton, and it's really funny. Next we got the dream sequence, which is pretty good with the giant Krabby Patty, and then the Krabby Patty walking into his room. And I like this scene with the cookie pizza and another perfect line, actually in your arteries. And then what SpongeBob needed was sleep, which was pretty funny, and then the episode ends with a perfect joke, and here is where I talk about a lot. This episode is super funny, and in my opinion, it's just too charming to hate. Fear of a Krabby Patty is one of those funny, amazing episodes from season 4 with such iconic lines as "Wait, where do you get that piano? Day 15? Give it up for day 15, and I'll be there to feast on the goo of his shattered psyche. Wait, what's going on? Whoa, I've arranged them into a piano." And the best one, just remember, SpongeBob, I'll always be with you right here. In my heart, actually, in your arteries. This is one of the funniest episodes and one of the best episodes in the show. 10/10.
Alrighty, well I hope y'all liked what my collaborator had to say. I find myself agreeing with a lot of their points, and so I'll be talking about that, as well as some points of my own now. Our introduction to Season 4 happens to be one of its most memorable episodes, Fear of a Krabby Patty. This is one of those episodes of the season that could fit right into later Season 3, which makes sense given the placement of this episode. And if I remember correctly, this episode was originally going to be a Season 3 episode anyway, so now it doubly makes sense. And right off the bat, the first thing that always gets me about Fear of a Krabby Patty is the art style. I know many others before me have talked about this, including my collaborator, but I'll give my own spin on it. So the art style in this episode is pretty unique compared to other episodes of the show, and I really like it. It's hard to describe what exactly makes the characters in this episode look different from others. I guess, it feels more round than usual. For sure, the eyes are bigger than they usually are. I didn't realize that this episode was storyboarded by the same person who boarded Dying for Pie, which I suppose now that I think about it, is also a pretty different looking episode, so I guess that makes sense. Whatever makes this episode different, I don't care all that much. I just like what it gave us. In some ways, I agree with Spongyreviews that the style here almost feels like a test run of the kind of stuff we'll be seeing once later Season 9 rolls around, because at some points in this episode, the animation gets very exaggerated and fluid, which reminds me of those future episodes. And now, thinking of the episode itself, I quite like it. Right from the outset, the plot of the episode kicks into gear with Mr. Krabs changing the Krusty Krab's business hours. I like this gag here of Mr. Krabs being dressed like an artist while making this change. And like Spongyreviews noted at the beginning of their review, this episode does share some similarities with Graveyard Shift. And while watching this episode, I think of how episodes like this one and Graveyard Shift make one remember that Squidward and SpongeBob are literally the only Krusty Krab employees. As Squidward cries out in outrage about the new hours for the Krusty Krab, I like the gag of him zipping up the kitchen window. I also really like how this gag is remembered a minute later when SpongeBob bursts through the wall in happiness, which was also cute and funny. SpongeBob, of course, is so happy because Mr. Krabs declares the Krusty Krab to be open for 24 hours so that he can compete with Plankton. Despite the similar plot element with Graveyard Shift, this episode has a much different take on the open 24 hours concept. This keeps Fear of a Krabby Patty from feeling redundant, and as Spongyreviews said, is exactly why this episode is not a ripoff by any means. Plankton's scheme in this episode is actually low-key very smart and thought out. When situated in the broader context of the show, it's kind of cool how Plankton's first appearance right after the movie is of him having a really smart plan, just like he did in the movie. Shows that maybe something stuck after the movie. The something in this case being his planning abilities. This is also Plankton's and Karen's first appearance after being upgraded to a main character, so it's cool that he appears right away like this. I think that Plankton's scheme here is somewhat competent, and that the fact that it's somewhat competent might be a leftover effect of the movie, which is something I talked about here, or that I talked about in my review of that when I talked about the establishment of the Plankton plot. Moving on, we start seeing the effects of such dangerous sleep deprivation on the Krusty Krab workers. I can't be the only one who gets anxious about how they don't get enough sleep and how they're kind of slowly killing me, right? Anyway, I really liked this scene. The bit with Mr. Krabs and the bell is great all throughout this part, and I love Squidward's "even my bags have bags" line, complete with a very detailed close-up and an audio cue, as is the SpongeBob SquarePants way. I find it funny that Spongyreviews and I both wrote a very similar line in our scripts independently of each other. What can I say? SpongeBob just has some iconic comedic styles. I also find SpongeBob's endless enthusiasm here to be really cute. But even I have to agree with Squidward that there just something ain't right about that little sponge to be this cheerful after days without sleep. Like Spongyreviews, I also really liked the montage here of all the endless days with no sleep. It's a good way of moving the story along and showing the passage of time while also getting the jokes in. This episode is really on the mark with all the visual gags, like SpongeBob's crazy look when he starts pushing out random stuff instead of Krabby Patties. I love how all this ends up with him being scared of Krabby Patties too, and the whole part with all the giant Krabby Patties is great. And then, of course, I love the dramatics of the I want to live part, and I just love the dramatic cue with Squidward's tired face. Hilarious. From here, as in Mr. Krabs sending SpongeBob to a psychiatrist, we move into a kind of part 2 for this episode, as this is one of those episodes with 2 distinct parts. At least that's how I always remember it. And while this section is not as strong as the first, it's still pretty good. It just takes a second to really get funny, though. But once SpongeBob brings out that piano, the episode returns to what some may call a barrel of laughs. And I love that the piano gag is brought back later. It reminds me of that one ASDF movie joke. Do you guys remember those? Those are some of my favorite little videos when I was younger. Anyway, Plankton's attempts to get SpongeBob to tell him the formula vary in entertainment value, kind of leaning towards the meh side unless there's a particularly good joke in there. I do really enjoy the dream sequence with SpongeBob and the Krabby Patty, though. The Krabby Patty's voice is inherently funny to me for some reason, and like my collaborator, I love the arteries bit. I wonder how many kids even know what an artery is. I wonder how many learned about them because of this episode. You know, that's actually how I learned what the word sterile meant. Believe it or not, it was because of the episode Suds. Anyway, this episode ends pretty well, too. It's always fun to see Plankton's schemes foiled by SpongeBob simply being his happy self. And y'all know I love endings where everyone's laughing because they're wholesome and they usually include one last stinger, like in this episode where Mr. Krabs generously cuts the hours down to 23 from 24. Good luck, SpongeBob. Good luck. And so, bringing it all together now, Fear of a Krabby Patty is a pretty good episode in my opinion. Now, I can't quite agree with my collaborator here that the episode is the funniest in the show. Sorry, friend, but I do think it is pretty funny. I also don't think this episode really drags at any point. Well, actually, let me not lie. On some watches, the stuff with Plankton ends up feeling nearly dull for me, but on others, they don't, so it really just depends on my mood. So I think this episode still deserves to be in my amazing tier, which is where it shall be, with the score of 9.2 out of 10. Coming up next is Shell of a Man, which is an episode that I always feel like is in season 5 for whatever reason. I guess I can say that that's one thing about these new few seasons of the show, especially seasons 5, 6, 7, and kinda 8. I never know which episodes belong to which season. I think that's just because I rewatched all of these episodes much less than I did the first 3 seasons, because I can already see a bit of improvement in my ability to guess which episodes are from which season just from this project of reviewing every episode. But anyway, let me talk about the episode now. As this episode begins, one thing I've started to think about is just how many episodes start with a shot of the Krusty Krab, and not just a shot of the Krusty Krab, but a shot that's always at the exact same perspective between episodes, perhaps with some small differences between. And yeah, I know why this is. It's an establishing shot that gives us context for where we are, since it would feel weird if those weren't there, wouldn't it? And sometimes the show reuses backgrounds too. In fact, not just sometimes, it definitely does. All I'm saying is that in this episode, I started thinking about this, that's all. None of this has any bearing on the episode, or on anything really. It's just neat to think about, especially because the backgrounds are still very visually interesting, even if they happen to be reused. Anyway, getting into the episode properly, I like this beginning portion. It's always fun to watch SpongeBob enjoy making Krabby Patties, even when that entails some dramatics as the patties go to the hungry customers. I love how he's acting like a parent watching their child leave the home, which I guess in some ways he kind of is. And I think it's even funnier that it turns out that he made the patty for himself. I also really like how quick this episode gets to the point, and I love how Mr. Krabs is acting shady as hell, hiding under a dumpster for no reasons that we're immediately aware of. It adds a bit of intrigue to this episode, which I can always appreciate. I also just like how this episode is about Mr. Krabs in the first place. It's always nice to see a bit of his past. He's like Benson from Regular Show, or I guess Benson's like him, the boss with a very varied past. The subject matter of this episode is, I imagine, much more relatable to people who have seen people from their past at events. I'm not quite at the stage in my life where that has happened to me, and I'll never go to a high school reunion, so feel free to cross that out. But it's fun to see an episode about it like this. The dilemma of this episode really parallels those feelings that you have when you don't want people you used to know to see how certain things have changed in your life. I will admit that this first little bit is a little slow, with Mr. Krabs reminiscing, but things pick right back up when SpongeBob goes back to the kitchen, only to hear Mr. Krabs wailing. The part where he finds Mr. Krabs' empty shell is kind of really funny to me for no real reason. Though while I'm here, I like that this episode is utilizing a real phenomenon. That's something I haven't really talked about SpongeBob SquarePants doing before. But yeah, let me make it clear. I love that this show utilizes its underwater setting to have its characters do semi-realistic things at times. It's not necessarily educational, but it can teach us some cool underwater facts, you know? Every day, Hillenburg's marine biologist influence jumps out. It especially comes out in the SpongeBob comics, which everyone should read, by the way. Anyway, SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs come up with a plan to keep up Mr. Krabs' reputation. Put SpongeBob in the shell. What could go wrong? Do I even have to ask? SpongeBob in Mr. Krabs' shell is just so damn cute during the entire episode. I love SpongeBob's little line about how he and Squidward have been making fun of Mr. Krabs behind his back for years. It's just one of those tiny little characterizing throwaway lines that I like. It also implies a more friendly relationship between SpongeBob and Squidward than it might seem on the surface. Work buddies type beat. But anyway, SpongeBob is definitely having a field day with this plan, pretending to be Mr. Krabs to the point where Mr. Krabs almost pulls a Plankton in Plankton's army. You could tell that Tom Kenny is very much enjoying himself here, and I love it. The actual scene of the reunion is full of tension, at least at first, but not too much tension. It helps to keep the scene engaging and enjoyable without making us sweat too much, and there's plenty of jokes in here as well. I'll admit that the speech gets a little dull near the end, but it ends quickly enough that the problem is nipped right in the bud. And then even better is the ending of this episode. I thought it was really wholesome how everyone comes together at the end when Mr. Krabs reveals himself, because you know what? That was pretty tough of Mr. Krabs to admit the thing that he wanted to hide. And as it turns out, everyone's got something to hide too. This part of the episode reminds me a lot of that one part in Bubble Buddy, or an episode I haven't reviewed yet, I Heart Dancing. Of course, while everyone else's woes are more permanent, Mr. Krabs is able to get a cheeky joke in at the end about his shell growing back. Shell of a Man is a good, solid episode. It's not especially funny, but it's still pretty great. And the focus on SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs here is a solid win in my book, because this episode has got my father-son crumbs all over the place. And SpongeBob is absolutely adorable here, and I like how Mr. Krabs is portrayed in this episode as well. I think in the end, this episode fits just fine in my amazing tier, where it comes in with a score of 9 out of 10. As always, I'll be ending this video with some closing thoughts of mine, which for once are actually kind of long. Well, firstly, I hope y'all enjoyed the collaboration. It's the first time I've ever done something like that, and I thought it was fun. I highly recommend checking out Spongyreviews' channel, which is in the description. They recently put out a video about the top 5 most overhated episodes of the show, and I think it's a fun one. I guess that this also goes to show that I am open for collaborations. I would love to do a video with someone where we talk about the show, more conversational style. But I'm also perfectly happy doing what I do now. Alright, let me move on to the next point. So, 2 amazing tier episodes in a row. In season 4? Am I already starting to have unpopular opinions? I guess I should make things clear right now, although hopefully you guys have already picked up on this. I'm a very forgiving TV watcher. I just am. The episodes that make my highest tiers aren't always going to be the greatest things on the planet. They're simply episodes that I really enjoyed watching, and that's it. And perhaps this means that my score inflation is going to be starting sooner than I thought, but like I said before, I don't think it's truly noticeable until season 6, but that's just me. Anyway, season 4 has clearly gotten off to a really good start, which is good, because there's going to be some diverse ratings in this season, I'll tell you now. If you really want, you can always just go to the forum and see how I've rated episodes, or you could just stay here and guess what they're going to turn out to be. But so far, this season is pretty good. Let's see how long it can keep that streak going. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and end this video, and I'll see y'all in the next one.